Hi all. Today we are continuing Angular lesson 8 Angular routing of our Angular tutorial series. I'm Sachitra Geekan again. Let's start our lesson. When we work with single page applications in our DOM, we change our views by some logics for some particular components. And sometimes as user perform application tasks, they need to move between some different views that we have defined. To handle the navigation of one view to another view, we have to use Angular router. The Angular router enables navigation by interpreting the browser URL as an instruction to change the view. So this Angular router is containing in Angular routing module. In previous lesson, we discussed about such a module called HTTP client module for communicate with servers, and today we are discussing about Angular route modules. Let's go to our code. When we create a new Angular application, we can say to our Angular CLI, this particular application need to enable Angular routes. For that, when you create in an Angular application, what you have to do is there's a CLI parameter ng new. That's how we create new Angular application. And here my application name, and then the parameter is routing. If you have passed this particular parameter routing, when you create in a new Angular application, Angular CLI will create some of files and added them into your Angular application. But in our first lesson, when we creating this Angular application, we didn't mention this routing parameter. So what we can do? Now we can create this. What Angular CLI do is by manually. So I'm going to enable routing features in our Angular application by manually. So you can see how Angular CLI enables these features in our Angular project. For that, first thing first, what we have to do is we have to define a new Angular module. In our previous application, we have defined Angular module, and here also in my app directive, I'm going to create a new module. How? ng generate module. I'll name it as app routing module. App routing module. When I create in this module, it will create a new folder and it will add this routing module will add in that folder. But since this app routing module is root level module, I would like to add it in my app folder. So I move it to my app folder and I delete in this directory. Okay. Now newly created app routing module is my app directory. So if you go to your app routing module, you can see that there's a new module with new ng module decorator. Now let's see what we can do using our Angular routing module. This is our application we use so far, and you can see now in our navigation bar there's two buttons, home and cart. In this example, what I am going to do is to create some routings between this home and cart views. If the URL is home, application will show the page with this item cards, and if you navigate to the cart page, it will show you the cart list. the card list which we created in previous Angular module lesson. Okay, now I am going to do my coding. Okay, now we came to our code, and when you see my app routing module, you see that there's a one import called common module. What common module contains is that common module exports all the basic module directives and pipes such as ngif, ng4, decimal pipes and so on. But since this app routing module is a specific module which we use for only Angular routing, so there's no need of this common modules to this particular Angular routing module. So I will remove this import from here and also from here. Save it. Now, in my example, I wanted the Angular routing module. So what I have to do is I want to import Angular routing module, which is called router module from Angular router. Okay, now I have imported it. Okay, before going further, I will define my all root level routes in this router module because these definitions are needed for our further implementations. Here I'm going to uh, define my routes to set up routes constant where we going to define our routes. So const my routes, I will get variable as routes and its type also routes, which is important from Angular router module. And for now we will keep it as an empty array, and now I am going to import my router module to my app routing module. In my app routing module, we in our previous lesson we learned how to import modules, and here I am going to import my router module and router module. And there's a special thing, there's a method called for root static method. That for root static method is a method that configure the root routing module for your application. When you call router module for root routes like this, router module dot for root, and we are passing a routes type parameter, which is where we defined our routes, which we are going to say to Angular is that instantiate the instance of router class. That's it. And also we want to export our router module from our app routing module, because in our app component we are going to use some features of this router module. I'm going to export my router module again here. So since we are importing our app routing module from our app component, we have to import it here. And also I have to set up the import statement. Okay, now I'm importing my app routing module. Since app routing module is exporting router module, the router module also available in the app module too. So now I have configured pretty much thing for our routing application. Now another thing we have to do is how these views are show while we are routing. For that example, I will show something. I will configure one route here to show you how these routings are working. For that, I am going to define one route. Since this route array is requiring route type object, and let's see what are these route type objects. Routes is route array. That's why we are declaring that routes array and initiate it with empty array. So it containing particular routes. So I go to that route interface and see about this type. So it has some optional parameters which we have identified here: path, path match, matcher, component, redirect to, outlet, can activate child, can deactivate, can load, and some other things like data and things. So if you want more detail about these properties, you can clearly see those are in here commenting these features. For example, that let's see about component that says the component instantiate when the path match, can be empty if child route is specified component, and it says that if some path is the URL path, if that path matches with that parameter, it will instantiate this component. How that path is going to match? Here we define in our path. We can define a path also. That's what we are going to do in this example. So I am defining one route here with two parameters. One is path and it's a string, and other is a component. So component. So here I am going to add a component. Then what will happen? I am going to show you. I want to define the path cart, and if the cart path matches, I want to instantiate the component called cart component, which we have implemented in our previous lesson. And there's a cart component. I am defining this cart component here. Okay. Now we have to import that cart component. And now one route is defined. That route says when the path matches with the cart, instantiate the cart component. But when we go to our Angular application, what will you see if I type here cart? You will see nothing. We are not navigate to this cart. Why? There's a no magic. So you can understand that we are rendering our app component, and that hierarchy is in our index HTML. We are adding that app root CSS selector in body tag, and app root is a template with app component, and app component contains some app item cards and some app header and some component details. But here we are not defined anything to show when that route matches. So what we have to do is Angular that Angular router module provides us some element to render the routed views, which is called router outlet. So what I'm going to do is, for now, I will add it here, router outlet. Okay. Since this route outlet is the member of our Angular router module, and since we are using this in app components, that's why we export that router module from our app routing module, and that's why we import app routing module from our app module. Now you can see the relation of this code. Okay, now I will save my application and see what will happen. No item in cards. That shows. There's another error what I have done in here. I haven't import my cart module in my app module, so I have to import it. If you got an error, that's because we are not importing this cart module here. So I have imported it here. So now let's move to our application again. You can see that there is mentioning no item in cart. That's the text where we added in our cart component, and if the cart item list is empty or cart item list is not defined. So let's see whether when I remove this URL path, what will happen. Now you can see that component is not initiated and there's a no list like that. Okay, again cart. Now it's working. When I add something, it shows my items here. Okay, now my application is working, but my routes are pretty much confusing. Why? If I am in a cart, this item card should not display. Those are relevant to this home route. So you can understand now we have to add this app component item cards to another component. So I have to move those functionalities to for each of my router handling. I'll create another component called online shop. Okay. Since online shop has separate functionalities, I would like to have separate module on it, and so I will navigate to cd modules. Let's make it quickly. No need to describe. You are pretty familiar with these things. Ng generate module online shop and enter. Online shop will create module. In my app module, I have to import that module also. What is online shop module? And it has imported. And in online shop module, cd online shop, we have to create new component. I will create ng generate component called shop. This is my shop component, and in shop component we have to show this list of items. So I will cut it here, and in my shop component I will post it in my shop component, and I have to get some functionalities which is needed item list, and that some functions at item to cart and things. So I will add those functions to my shop also. Now these functions are not needed to my app component. Are not needed to my app component, so I will cut it. And here, since we are implementing ng on init interface, it is required ng on init method, so I will keep it here and paste other things in my shop component. Okay, now item service, we have to import those things. Okay, now my shop component is ready, and in my shop module there should be a shop component. Now another thing that shop component is using our item card, and item card is with the context of our shareable module. So I have to import that shareable module to my online shop module. We learn these things. Okay, if you don't remember this thing, please refer our previous lesson number 7. Okay, now my application is ready. Let's see what will happen. Okay, since now I'm in the cart route, I am getting only the cart view, and if I go to root, there's nothing. So What's now? Now I have to uh, change this home button to shop and set router navigate to shop and show when it is a shop I want to show that my online shop component in here. So let's go to our code again. In my code what I have to do is change some labels and add some things. So here in my app header what I have to do is change this as shop, and now I have shop label, and when I now I have to define the route. To define the route I go to my app routing module and the route here which is shop. When it is shop I want to instantiate new online shop shop component. Now it's instantiated shop component. Let's see how my application works. I go to my application and I will type shop. Okay, now something happens. Angular may not get in the module changes, so I will stop my application here and run it again. Oh, there's a error that ng-switch it requiring view type. So I think I accidentally move view type also to my online shop component. Let's move it to in my app component. Okay, let's see whether now my application is working. Yes, it is working. Now you can see my shop is details are showing there. Styles getting some issues. Let's fix it later after Angular routes are clearly completed. Okay, now you know how Angular route matches and how Angular route rendered in the DOM, and definitely don't know what all routes are defined in here. So what I have to do is I have to give the access to these buttons, and I have to bind those routes with this. So I'm going to my header component. In header component, since my all buttons are in header component, what I have to do is defining these links using a router link. Router link stop and router link cart. Now I move to my Angular application. When I click on this button, I came to shop, and now I navigate to my cart and again to shop. But there's another directive called router linked active, which is a directive that gives us the feasibility to add any classes we want in the when the router linked in active mode. So what I'm going to do is I'm also going to add this router link active directive here, and since we have that active class defined in our header component, I will add this directive here, which is router link active, and our class name is also active. When the router link is active here, this active class will added to this span. Okay, let's see what will happen. Now I refresh my application. Let's go to the Angular application. Now you see when the route is enabled, that button is colored with the light green. When we go to the shop, it indicate that we are in the shop. Okay. Now route is completed. So in here, our functionality also I have, as we added there's the functionality. I click that buy button in here, and when we go to our cart, you can see that my cart is with items, and our index is there's a problem. This shows 0, 1 and 2. For that we can change my cart component with I plus 1. Okay, now in my cart, let's add some items. Now it started with 1. Okay, now we learn about Angular routes, and let's go to learn some more. Now let's we talk about wildcard routes. When since our Angular application contain two routes, which is shop and card, button, currently there's no checkout route defined. So I'll type checkout and press enter. What will happen? It automatically navigate to my route. So what I can do is use wildcard routes to navigate this kind of uh, unhandled navigation to some particular component. Let's say it's a 404 error component or something like that. So in that case, what we can do is we can create a new component, and where we can create this component is in our shareable module. Since shareable module is accessible from anywhere, I will go to my shareable folder. Here I will create my component ng generate component page. Component name is page not found. Let's say page not found component will create, and I will define my routes. Then in my shareable component, shareable module may contain now page not found component, and in page not found component we have to change my view. I will add h1 tag here. This page is not available, and say okay, that is enough for now. And in my root definitions, my routine module, I will add another root. Now here what we are going to use is wildcard. When using wildcard, one more thing you have to remember that when Angular considering about order of routes, it is important because Angular routes uses first match wins strategy when matching routes. So since wildcard matches any of the routes, it should be the last item of our route definition. So here as the last item, I will type my wildcard route here. For Angular, we have to add 2 stars to indicate that, say, this is the wildcard route, and component is my newly created page not found component. Okay, let's see what will happen when after saving this file. We are going here. It says page not available, and that means this has navigate to uh, our wildcard because the route is there's a no URL which matches to our route we define. So if we go to our cart or shopping cart, uh, those things are available as we expected. So now, now let's move to another thing, which is setting up some redirects, because you see that when this application is as a base route, uh, it shows that page is not available. Actually, what I want to is redirect. uh, when it is in base route, I want to redirect the application to my online shop. So to set up redirect, we can configure the route with path uh, you want to redirect from to the component. What to the component where you want. And let's see how we can do this. In here, I will add it before my wildcard and after other route definitions. And here, I'll add path. My base path is uh, empty string, and my component should be a sorry. What I want to is redirect to another route. So there's another property in my root object which is called redirect. If you want to see the definition of redirect, we can navigate here and see that redirect to here. It says the UR to redirect when the path matches. That means if this path matches when it is empty, that patch when that path matches, it will redirect to where we define it with the redirect property. So I will write redirect to where my shop, and also there I have to add the path match strategy as a full. Why we need to add it as a full? Let's see. Path match, and this describe the path match strategy, one of prefix of full. Normally it's a default is a prefix. By default the router checks URL element from left to see if the URL match given patch and stops when there is a match. For example, if there is a two URLs which is like this team and some ID and a user, and also it matches the team only ID. The halfway is matches because only it's matching the prefix. But now what I want is a full matching, because this after this defined routes there is another routes also, otherwise this empty string matches the all routes. So I will set this as full. So now I will save, and let's see what will happen when I go to my application. Now you can see my application starts with shops. I will clear this shop URL and press enter. Okay, now you are seeing that we are automatically navigate to the shop URL. Okay, as our next lesson, we are going to see how to use query parameters in our Angular routing application. So as a demonstration, what I am going to do is in my application, when there is some item in cart, I will create a function to call when I click on this name, and that function will navigate back to uh, shop URL with some query parameter with some ID of this item, and then it will highlight the relevant item uh, with some kind of CSS. So let's see how to do this and how to use query parameters for this functionality. In my code, first what I have to do is I have to add a click function here to triggers when I click on the label. So I name it as go to shop, with item. My function name is this, and I'm passing the item to as a parameter to this method. So when I go to my component, I have to declare this method, and it need to take item as parameter, and item need to import here. So, and if you console log, you can see that when I'm clicking this method, I will get that console in this item as the item where I use. So I will also add a class here for better viewing. Since if I didn't add any pointer style here, cursor style as pointer, this will not indicate as a click function. So I will add a simple class here for that. Okay. Now I can create my method here, console log item. If I go to my application and I will clear the console and we'll add some items to cart, and we'll go to my cart, and when I go to my table it shows a pointer, and when I click it here you can see that item is getting printed here. So now what I have to do is I have to navigate to the our shopping cart. How can we do it? For that we have to inject the router here. For that, how can we do it is as dependency injection router service, and using this router service what I'm going to do is dot router, it contains the navigate function. See this navigate function, there is two parameters which is required. First parameter and second one is extras is optional, and let's see what those parameters are requiring in this model. You can see that command is an array of URL fragment with which construct the target URL. There's an example you can see. There is an array with values, and this fragment will create a URL as team slash 33 slash user slash 11 like that, and this is relative to route is the our navigation extras. So they have two behaviors, some behaviors with options. And so now I'm going to declare my fragments, which is there's only one fragment which is I'm using to is a shop here, and other than I have to add a query parameter which is the item ID. So what I can do to add a query parameter here is defining an object with those query parameters we want to add to our URL. So first thing I wanted is just the ID. So I'll add the ID, and value of ID is item dot ID. Now you will see when I save this application, we can see in our demonstration what will happen. So I will go into my shop cart and we'll add some items to cart. Let's navigate to cart. Now I'm going to click on chocolate ice cream. So if I click on chocolate ice cream, see above URL area, you can see that when we go into the shop URL, it ID equals 1. So it added the query parameter. Angular added the query parameters as this way. So you will learn about these things. Angular added these query parameters in this specific way. Normally we have see that question mark and the parameter name, key and value, like that thing. But Angular added the query parameters as this way. So with a semicolon. So let's move to our uh, other component to see how to get these query parameters. What I have to do is in my shop component is getting that query parameter and do the functionality inside this shop component. So to get query parameters, Angular route module provide us a provider called activated route. So I'm going to inject it here, private route, and it's activated route. Now I am going to use this activated route in my ng on init method, since at that time the router route is resolved. So in here what I am going to do is uh, I have created a variable called selected ID of item, which default value is -1. So when I got a query parameter value with ID, I will assign that value to this variable. Let's assign that value to the variable. How I'm going to do is this dot selected ID of item equals this dot route, which is my activated route provider, and snapshot and param map dot get, which is my query parameter name ID. Now you can see that this is showing some error. What is it is always query parameter return a string value, and the selected ID of item is some number. So we can cast numbers, strings to numbers. So just by adding a plus sign as a prefix. So now my selected ID of item is value is assigned, and uh, we'll save it. Now what I have to do is if the selected ID of item is equal to item ID, then that item should highlight. For that, I will add here ng class attribute with condition. Condition is selected ID of item. If selected ID of item is equal to item dot id, then add a class called highlight, and otherwise there's a no class. And in my component CSS file, I have added the highlight class that just a solid border and with red color. So I save my application. Let's see what will happen. Okay, now since the ID parameter is 2, my vanilla ice cream item card highlighted. So let's see what happens if I change this to 1. Now you can see chocolate ice cream is highlighted. So as we came here with uh, by clicking some label, you can see that particular item highlighted. So that's how we are using our query parameters in Angular navigations. Next example of this routine tutorial, I'm going to discuss about preventing unauthorized access to routines. For that we can use auth guards, otherwise we called it root guards. To use root guards to prevent users from navigating to part of our application without some authorization or some other logic we are going to use. For that, uh, some auth guards available in Angular are can activate child, can deactivate, resolve, and can load and things. Okay, in this example, I am going to use can activate root guard, and what I am going to do is I will change this logout button as the login, and let's say if login button is clicked, then the user is login. User change state to login state, and if only if the user is logged in, that user can navigate to that cart. So first thing first, we have to uh, rename our header navigation button value. So in here, rather than logout, I will put it here as login. So just a sugar, I know. I will add click event here, capture and login function. And if the user is getting click logged in, what I'm going to do is I will save some value in my local storage dot set item. What I'm going to say it login state is login. So I'm set it to true. Otherwise that okay, requiring a string, so I will put it string. Yes, login. Okay, now I am changing my functionality little bit. What I am going to do is I'll add a class property here is logged in, and it's boolean with default value false. What I am going to do is in ng on init I am checking whether that local storage is login value is set to should be a get item. If get item value is equals to login, I will set this is login item property to true. Otherwise it is false. And when user click on login, if user click on login, if the get item is login is equals to true, it will remove item, or otherwise set item login to see. I will remove this item. login false, and otherwise it's set to login true. So here again true, true. Now what is happening here is when, and also here, okay, now what's happening is here, initially it's checked whether this local storage value is login is there, and it is, if it is a value true, we set its status is login logged into true, and otherwise it's logged into false. So in here, header component, I will check in, I will show it as login, and otherwise it as logout. So let's see what will happen. Now when we go to our Angular application, and let's move to our application local storage, and this local storage is in, sorry, its login is true, we have to show as logout and otherwise login. Okay, now you can see this local storage is login value is true, here button shows as it as logout. When I click on logout, yeah, it should be else. Okay, now if I click on logout, the value changed to false and label changed to login. Then again I can log in and log out. It's a simple sugar as a login logout function. So what is my main ambition is, if the user is login only, he can navigate to cart URL. For now there's such a limitations, but using Wildcard we are going to implement this functionality. I will go to my code again, and now I'm going to generate some guard here. For that I'll create new folder also. For now I'll go my PowerShell and navigate to my app folder. Now I will create new directory called guards, since there could be uh, some number of guards in our application. So for better separation, I create a new directive, navigate to it, and in here I'm creating my guard, ng generate guard, and my guard name. I will say it as login guard. Okay. Now Angular is creating my login guard, and it also asking me whether what is the interface I am going to implement here. As we discussed in this example, I am going to implement the can activate. Okay, now my auth guard is created. Login auth guard. Here it is returning a true always, but what I want to do is, if user is logged in, we have to return true, otherwise it's false. Now I will check here. I will add new variable here, logged in, and local storage dot get item, which is the my item name we declared here is its login. Since this is written in a string value, I will cast it to some boolean value using this technique, whether checking it's a true or any other value, and I am returning is logged in value here, and if the value is true, this can activate function will return true, and otherwise it return false. When we implement in the can activate interface, we require to implement that can activate method here, and using this method we can guard our routes. Now what I have to do is just add this route to my routes, where we define routes in app routing module. In here, uh, I want to prevent to go to the cart, so here I can add can activate, which is my auth guard is uh, login guard. So I have added my login guard here and save it. Let's move to my terminal, and it compiled successfully. Now let's move to our application again. So my login is false. So as expected, we do not have permission to go to the cart route. Let's check it. You can see whether I click here, that shows we have no navigations happens. But if I click on login, now my is login status is true. So now it should allow me to go to the card. Now you can see I have access to the card route. Okay, that's how we are using auth guard to prevent in unauthorized access from the to our routes. So in our Angular routing lessons, that's the last thing we are discussed about, and in our next lesson we are going to discuss about Angular forms. Let's conclude our lesson. Thank you.